Part of us kept hoping that he would reappear, and it is painful. I think our first reaction was just incredulity.
Migrant rights are human rights. Women's rights are human rights.
Stop resisting.
I wasn't comparing Trump to Hitler. I was comparing Hitler to Trump.
Ian just couldn't take it any longer. The last thing he wanted was to put his problems on you.
The investigation into Jamal Khashoggi's disappearance continues.
Turkish authorities believe he was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul.
The journalist hasn't been seen since entering the Saudi consulate more than 2 weeks ago.
Today, the Washington Post published Jamal Khashoggi's final article, prophetically entitled "What the Arab World Needs Most is Free Expression," and it was this very expression that seems to have cost the veteran journalist his life.
It's a column he filed the day before he entered that Saudi consulate and disappeared. And we hadn't published it until now because part of us kept hoping that he would reappear and do the editing with us as he normally did. We finally decided that the message in it was too important and we wanted to share it with our readers, in English and Arabic, by the way. And the message in it kind of encapsulates what he stood for, which is the need for free expression, especially and everywhere, but especially in the Middle East, and the absence of it as something that is holding back his own country, Saudi Arabia, and so many other countries in the region.
It must have been very painful editing it without him, a reminder of his absence, as I'm sure the last 2 weeks and a few days must have been hugely painful for you at the Washington Post. How have you been coping with the uncertainty and these allegations, these terrible, grisly allegations and details coming out of Istanbul?
It is painful. I think our first reaction was just incredulity. I mean, that something this monstrous and also stupid could be done by another government was almost unfathomable. And so from the beginning, we tried to keep, some hope alive that he was going to reappear. I think it's difficult, but it's also, I think people in this newsroom are totally committed to the mission of doing good journalism on this, the way we would do on anything. And in this case, good journalism means finding out what happened, and then from the point of view of the editorial side, the opinion side, which I head, insisting that there be full accountability for whoever is responsible, and that there can't be business as usual with a regime that would do something like this if, in fact, they did something like this.
There's been a lot written about Jamal Khashoggi in the last couple of weeks, a lot of it nonsense. I know that personally, having met him, and I don't recognise the man that some people have depicted in their accounts and descriptions of him. But what kind of man is he, or was he? We don't still know what tense we're meant to use. And what kind of journalist?
Well, I mean, that's partly why this last column is so heartbreaking, but also so important, because it really captures what he was fighting for through most of his life. And as you say, there's been a lot of nonsense put out by Saudi trolls and some conservative American trolls. But Jamal, aside from being an extremely warm, gracious, funny person who was always trying to help other people understand his country and his region, really, he was a journalist. He got himself fired any number of times in Saudi Arabia for not towing the company line. He went to Bahrain to start an operation there, got himself fired on the first day for printing a dissident's column that the regime wasn't happy with. And he finally left his country, not happily, because he felt he could not express himself, and that if he had this opportunity to come out and try and speak the truth and try and spark debate and try and encourage free expression in the Middle East, when so many of his countrymen were muzzled or imprisoned for doing the same, that he had a responsibility to do that, even at some risk. And so he did, and that's who he was.
Well, in Fahrenheit 9/11, the documentary maker Michael Moore took aim at President George W. Bush and the war on terror. His latest movie is Fahrenheit 11/9, named after the American version of the date that Hillary Clinton didn't become president.
Try to impeach him, just try it.
And surprise, surprise, this time it's President Donald Trump in the director's crosshairs.
The American dream is dead.
Yes, the whole rotten system that gave us Donald J. Trump. Because Trump did not fall out of the sky. Trump is the result of decades of behavior on the part of corporate America, our political system, the whole shebang that gave us Trump. You know, one of the important ingredients of getting Donald Trump as president is first dumbing down the country to accept somebody like that as president of the United States. That began a long time ago with the debasing of our education system, closing libraries, making it difficult for people to go to university, student loans that are $120,000 to get a college degree. This all is part and parcel of how we ended up where we're at.
I mean, you blame a lot of people, including yourself, actually.
Yes, I am also partly.
You know, the mainstream media, Barack Obama, triangulating Democrats and the electoral system. But there is a reality in there, which is quite a lot of your people, if I can put it like that, did actually vote for Donald Trump. So they're to blame as well.
Well, when you say my people, I assume you mean people that came from the working class.
People you like to stand up for, yeah.
Yeah, but actually the facts show that Hillary Clinton won the vote of the people who earn under $30,000 a year. So that needs to be kind of put out there. I think that people think that, well, Trump's supporters are all these white working class guys. That part is true. If you're saying that I am Trump's demographic, I am. I'm a white guy over the age of 50. I have a high school education, and I'm pissed off. So that would normally that would make me fit in well with the Trump voter. But
are you saying it was okay for them to vote for Trump?
Well, I understand why they voted for Trump. I understand why a lot of them voted for Trump. You have to understand, 8 million Barack Obama voters voted for Trump. Okay, so we're not just talking about appealing to racists who are for Trump. I'm talking about there are many people who just wanted to throw a Molotov cocktail into the middle of the political system and blow it up, because the system had not served the working people very well over the last few decades.
Do you really think Donald Trump is a fascist, a Nazi? Because at the end of the film, you put his voice over Hitler at the Nuremberg rallies.
Yes, I wasn't comparing Trump to Hitler. I was comparing.
You sort of are when you do that.
No, I was comparing Hitler to Trump.
Right.
There's a big difference here. If I was going to say that Trump was Hitler, I put a little mustache on him and a swastika and all that. No, the film shows Hitler speaking at a large rally, and Donald Trump comes out of his mouth. That's my version of satire, and what I'm trying to say here is that what we have in the 21st century is not the fascism of the 20th century. There was a book in the 80s written by Bertram Gross called Friendly Fascism, and that book said that the fascism of the 21st century would not come with concentration camps or swastikas. It'll come with a smiley face and a TV show.
She's one of the most famous faces in Hollywood, but off the silver screen, she's an outspoken advocate for women's and children's rights. Well, earlier this year, Amber Heard visited Syrian refugees living in the Zatari refugee camp in Jordan. I spoke to the actress about her humanitarian work alongside Syrian asylum seeker Zina Bakazli.
I am from Syria, basically, and I came to the Netherlands 4 years ago as an asylum seeker. So today I am participating in the One Young World Summit in order to make the voice of the Syrian refugees heard in the politics, as well as in the business, in order to make sure that our voices are also heard in those fields that are important to the whole world.
And that's also why I am here. It's important to amplify those voices. And, I had the honor to spend time in a Syrian refugee camp earlier this year in Jordan. I've done a lot of work on the border, the U.S. border, which is where I'm from. And you get a sense of whether you've been there or not. You can't ignore it. It's a global issue. It's a global crisis. It's a human issue.
You're choosing to bring attention to them at a time in your career when I imagine you're having plenty of calls, emails, asking you to you know, audition for films, etc. You're riding high career-wise. Why have you made the time for this? Why does it matter so much to you?
Nothing could be more important to me. Migrant rights are human rights. Women's rights are human rights. And wherever there is justice denied, justice in of itself is undermined. It's not an issue that affects a group of people or a kind of person. If it affects you, it affects me.
It's a sport of pride, prowess, bitter rivalries and big personalities. Even those who aren't fans are likely to remember this fight. I warn you, some flash photography coming up. Well, that was one of the most heated meetings between David Hay and Derek Childers. It wasn't even their actual fight back in 2012. Looking a bit embarrassed there, guys. Thanks for joining us in the studio.
We're older now. We're older now. That was a thing of the past.
So, David, you have now become Derek's manager.
Yes.
Which we can't really believe, considering how much you hated each other.
Yeah,
Is that all forgotten now?
It's forgotten. You know, we had our issues in the past, and we sorted it out like men do. We squashed whatever beef there was. We've known each other. We sort of see each other out and about on the circuit, and ever since our fights, everything's been amicable. As far as whenever I've seen him, there's always been respect there. Whenever you share the ring with someone, the respect's always there. And you know, Derek gave me a shout and said, you know, what could I do for him if I was looking after him in terms of managing, promoting, training? You know, how would I
make him better?
Exactly. So I told him what I believed he could do. You know, after watching his last fight against Carlos Takam on Sky Box Office, he pulled off an amazing come-from-behind victory, knocking out a fighter that, and you know, Joshua couldn't knock out. And I saw something in him that night that I've never seen before. And, you know, with the right infrastructure, with the right team around him, which I believe I bring, I think he can reach the stars. Now, he wants to be the heavyweight champion of the world, you know, and I want to assist him. You know, I want to make sure that he gets, you know, he gets well compensated for his, you know, putting his life on the line as he does time and time again, and make sure that everything runs smoothly and we see the very best War Chisora.
Well, you know, kudos for that knockout. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
What do you want? Because you must have had to have done a lot of forgiving and forgetting to go to David Hay and say, please help me get better. Please help me get to the top.
It's not that. It was things happen. You know, we had a fight and I lost. And then after you lose a fight, in boxing, it's more like, you know what, I've lost a fight. I got knocked out. That's what happened to me. So I was like, okay, enough respect for the man. And then I saw what he was doing with his career. So I figured out he can help me achieve what I need to achieve right now. So this is why I approached Dave.
We've got some very happy news now. We're getting this from Kensington Palace.
The Duchess of Sussex has revealed that she's pregnant with a baby due next spring. The announcement was made just hours after Harry and Meghan arrived in Australia.
And the news has many royal watchers down under very excited.
Oh my goodness! Your baby.
Oh, look at that. That's very sweet.
Good to meet you guys. This is very nice. Thank you.
Princess Meghan touched Camilla's hand.
That's amazing.
And will you remember it for the rest of your life? Yes.
Well done, Harry.
Oh, she is beautiful. I think we just have an understanding and like a friendship. It's beautiful.
And how did it feel to be able to congratulate them on soon-to-be parents?
Lovely.
Having Harry and Meghan come here, and also the great news of the new baby on the way. You know, it's been really tough for rural people not having rain for 2 years, and, you know, Harry and Meghan come today and look what happens. Like, it's absolutely bucketing down.
He's known for playing bass guitar in two of the most influential bands in British musical history, Joy Division and The Order. And now, Peter Hook is set to take part in an orchestral reimagining of Joy Division's post-punk repertoire at the Royal Albert Hall. Ahead of that, he spoke to me about the future, as well as his own battle with abuse and depression, and how it felt when his daughter came home from the Manchester Arena bombing safe.
Having the freedom to do anything I want has been wonderful after that discipline of being in a group. I started playing Joy Division at first, celebrating the music because it was 30 years since Ian died, sadly. Then I moved into New Order.
Remind us what happened to him.
Moment. Well, Ian committed suicide. He was suffering from epilepsy, and it led to very bad depression. The treatment for it in those days was actually quite barbaric, and I think the thing is that the knowledge about the disease was not very good either. People are a lot more better able and better informed about it now.
And how did that impact on your...
Well, I think you can imagine it brought Joy Division when they were really on the cusp of becoming all our hard work over 3 years was just coming to fruition when Ian just couldn't take it any longer. And, you know, I mean, the guilt of something like that happening to you stays with you forever. I mean, I've not been immune from that. I had clinical depression. And yes, it is. You know, I mean, it's odd to think how many people suffer and suffer in silence. What happened with Ian was that we were too young to even be able to contemplate what we should do. And there were very people around him that were professionals that didn't know what to do either. So the thing is that what I've learned is that you have to ask for help and seek it whenever you can and not suffer in silence. Because unfortunately, Ian was a wonderful human being, and the last thing he wanted was to put his problems on you. So what he would do was he would always say to you, I'm okay, stop worrying, everything's fine. And you wanted that more than anything in the world. You switched off, and of course he was alone again. And I think that that's the lesson that I've learned and I always tell people, you have to do it, you have to, you know, express what's happening to you.
What triggered your clinical depression, do you think?
My divorce. Actually, sadly. It's just one of them things.
That was the first time we met, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, 1995, yeah. I was very impressed.
Of course,
yes,
aren't we?
were, yeah. I mean, it's an easy trap. It's not a shock for people when they go through something as traumatic as that. And yeah, it did. And I must admit, it was like falling into a glass pit that you couldn't find any way out of. And I was treated badly in that I was prescribed badly. And I ended up having a few friends kick me up the booty, shall we say, that pulled me back and saved me, I have to say, yeah.
It could have ended very differently, is what you're saying?
Yes, it could. And I do think that in the back of my mind, you know, I've been through it once with a great friend and colleague, and I knew roughly what was happening, but it's still not easy to deal with. So yeah, I'm very happy. I'm very happy.
Caroline had mental health issues as well, didn't she?
Yes. So we were probably a bad combination at that time.
Yeah, you did speak very nicely of her when she died. It was a challenge, though, wasn't it?
Yes, she was a challenging person. But, you know, love is blind, deaf, dumb and stupid.
How was she challenging?
Well, she was difficult, you know. It's. I think the thing is that the job that we both did, putting yourself right in the firing line, if you like, makes everything, makes you sensitive to everything else, and it also makes you vulnerable. You know, I mean, you're in the limelight, you know, and people act differently towards you, and sometimes it's not helpful. So, no, it was very sad. It was very sad.
And she was abusive?
Yes, she was, yes.
How did you deal with that?
By not telling anyone. And suffering it in silence. No, and again, you know, I learned later many times that it's not. I mean, you know, as a man, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's something you don't like to admit.
I get that.
But the thing is that I ended up very ill through it, and when I came to do the book, I realised that I didn't want anybody else to be scared. And it's amazing how many of my close friends have come to me and said, you know, thanks for saying that, because I've never been able to say it, and it happened to me. That was the worst phone call that I've ever had in my life.
Just tell people what happened.
Well, she was at the Ariana Grande concert. She was right at the front, and she was just about to get the train home, because there's always that unfortunate thing with the arena. It's such a terrible to get away from
Yeah.
afterwards, that she was going to leave.
Yeah.
Ariana came back on and did the encore. She decided to stay. So she stayed, and she was still there when the bomb went off. Now, my brother's a policeman, and he was telling me that Ariana Grande's encore saved 2,000 lives.
Wow.
That's what they reckoned.
Wow.
If she hadn't have played those 3 minutes extra, 2,000 more people would have been in that foyer leaving. And so it was incredible. I thought the woman handled herself superbly. And I think she, you know, if it was possible to come out of something well, then she did. She really was. It was such an awful thing as an artist. To think that you could ever put any of your fans in danger is just terrible. So my daughter was trampled in the crush to get out. Her foot was badly damaged. She had to go to hospital as one of the casualties. But she was home, and that was the nicest feeling
As a parent,
in the world.
I can't begin to imagine.
She suffered terribly from it, though. She's, you know,
Really?
yeah, over the year, and it was funny. Even small things like I noticed that she always has to leave her bedroom door open now, whereas she never used to do that before. So, you know,
Have you
little
talked to her
subtle
about that?
changes. Yeah, we do. We talked about it a lot. Yeah, and she went to the concert with me when Ariana did the benefit concert. And, you know, we've tried to exorcise the demons, but, you know, there's so many children, so many people's children that I knew who were there that night, and some of them saw much worse things than Jessica did, God bless her. On November the 23rd, it's 14 years, on November the 23rd, I've been sober, that I thought my life was over, when in reality, it was just beginning. And I've achieved more in these 14 years, and I'm a happier person than I've ever been, and stronger than I've ever been. So it's funny, it's, you know, you take that one step, think it's all over, and then realise, not long afterwards, that, you know, your life is just beginning. I'm very happy.
And what direction are you taking now?
Well, I just try to be a good husband, a good father, and a great musician. And there's nothing else I can do, really.